Salve and Kairete. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different, and I know this is also releasing late on a Saturday, very strange. I just finished watching Saturday Morning Chill with Pastor Fisk, and a Latin phrase, suggestion for a Latin phrase came up, and somebody commented in the chat on it. And I don't want to call you out, don't want to cause you an embarrassment, but that looked like a Google Translate. My students, back when I had them, would occasionally use Google Translate to solve things, and you could tell immediately that it was Google Translate. And it was all because it was always a mess. Google tends to use infinitives because Google doesn't understand Latin, at least not yet. And I don't expect it will for a while, so don't use Google Translate. And anyway, in response to that, I thought it might be fun, especially since I haven't done anything like this in a long time, to translate the phrase, which is right here, for Pastor Fisk, and record myself while doing it, so people get a good idea of how to do something like this rather than rely on Google Translate. So here we go. We have the phrase, "Don't wallow in the muck with those who have no hope, but stand upon these ruins." So it might be a little bit different from that. That's just what I remember saying. So first thing that we need to do in order to translate an English phrase into Latin is actually understand how the English phrase works. So we need to identify what each of the words are, what their function is in the sentence, and then we can pick out the correct words from a Latin dictionary, which I've already done. I've got the notes over here, and string it all together, put everything in the right form, in the right position, based on all the information we've gleaned from this. So, starting with our red pen, we want to find a subject in the sentence, and, well, there is no noun for our subject. It is in the verb. We've got "don't wallow" here. So that's going to be an imperative, we know immediately. And this could be speaking to a single person or a plural person. I presume, since Pastor Fisk is talking to a lot of people there, that he's intending a plural. So then we want a second person, not singular, plural. And this is, as an imperative, Latin really only has the present as a common imperative. The future doesn't make much sense here, and also very rare, so why would we do that? So present. And then as for active or passive in the English, this is a active action. In the Latin, it might be different depending on whether or not the verb is deponent. So active, imperative. So there is those two handled. Don't is, of course, a negative, which will change how we do this rather than just translating it as a standard imperative. Now that that's come to mind, I should actually be sure to note that we're going to translate this in long form first. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to shrink it down so it's an actual colloquialism, a phrase. And what you can do with that for Latin is you can cut out a lot of the extraneous words and make it as simple as possible. So prepositions are largely optional for phrases like that, and you can use abbreviations. I don't know that we'll be doing much of that. But anyway, let's move on. So we got "in" is prepositional phrase right here, and we'll get to the case for when we actually go into the Latin and figure that out. So prepositional phrase ends with "muck." Got another prepositional phrase right there. We've got an article. Articles don't appear in the Latin, so we're going to X that out. Those, we have a demonstrative. And with this, we could treat this in Latin as a ablative absolute if they were at the beginning and had a different function. But no, instead, this case, this is going to be like accompaniment, yeah, because we've got personification there with the demonstrative. We've got a relative pronoun, so relative pronoun, demonstrative, and then have no hope. So here's a verb in the subordinate clause. We've got a negative, and then we've got a direct object. That phrase ends right there, and moving on, we have our conjunction, that's disjunction. Brain field right there. So this is going to be one of those words that's optional in Latin. And we have a couple of different options for translating that. You could do ought, said, and that's Greek. autem, but autem I don't think would make much sense in this case, so just going to leave those there. Then we have our next verb, and this is going to be another second person plural present imperative. No need to parse it again. And then we've got a further prepositional phrase, another demonstrative here, and then ruins is the object of that prepositional phrase. So we know effectively what everything is doing in the English, and now we just need to figure out what words go with what. I'm going to start with the verbs in both cases, and a verb for wallow in Latin is volutare, which is the infinitive. So we know that this is a first conjugation verb. So it's going to be voluto, volutare, volutavi, volutatum. Most likely, it might be one of the irregular firsts. And initially, we would think just pair it with a non and change it into second person plural, which would be volutate. But that would be incorrect because we got a negative command. And when you do negative commands, not is its own verb. And we use noli normally. So it's nolo, nole, N-O-L-L-E. And the infinitive, yeah, that's the infinitive right there. It's an unusual, kind of like esse and posse. But in this negative command sort of case, we want to take nole, and it becomes our imperative. And then the verb with the meaning is an infinitive. And nole means, of course, be unwilling to whatever the verb is. So we want nole to be a second person plural, and then we get nolite. It's a weird one. So nolite plus the infinitive, so we leave that as it is. All right, in the muck, of course, the preposition is going to be end, and wallow. Wallow is not it is, of course, motion, because you're wobbling back and forth. But we are not moving from one location into another location. So in this case, and let's switch to blue, so it's easier to see, in is going to take the ablative case, showing ablative of place where. And then our word for muck, we have a couple different options. It all depends on what you mean by muck. If you mean by muck like a dung heap, which is the first word that I found, then we would use the word sterquilinium, which is a neuter noun. And as I said, it means dung heap. But that's a heap. Muck is normally something you find on the side of the road or in a ditch, and I think that's closer to what Pastor Fisk's intention is. If not, you should definitely correct me. So, our other option for mud is lutum, which is also a second declension neuter. Note that this U is a short U. If it were a long U, then it would be confused with a different word. This one means, as I said, it means dirt, mire, clay, or mud. But there is a third option, and I think the third option gets a lot closer to what he intends, and that one is cainum, yet another second declension neuter. This one also means dirt or mud, but more particularly, it is often used in reference to nasty stuff. So this isn't just like dirt with water added. This is what you would actually find in the gutter. This is what would actually be in the road in a Roman city. So this one, I think, is the one we want, because it's filth is more the idea behind that one. Okay, so we've got muck identified with cainum. With, of course, would be the preposition cum. But the rest of this phrase is a little bit more difficult. We do have a demonstrative. And we've got a relative pronoun here. So what we could do, instead of just translating it as a prepositional phrase and a relative clause, jumped the gun there, as a prepositional phrase, relative clause. For a moment there, I thought it said participle. But what I was going to say is that we could instead treat this as a participle. So in that case, we would go to hope as our verb, but specifically the negative hope, not having any hope. Well, I checked Cassell's, and Cassell's has two different ways of saying hopeless. There's the verbal way of saying have no hope. And that is with the verb kareo, to lack, to be without, and it takes the ablative. So it'd be kareo spe, I have no hope. Or alternatively, there is the noun expes, which just means hopeless. Now, since we have expes as a noun, one would expect that there's probably also a verb with that, because space has a verb. It's spero, I hope. So one would think that maybe expero would be a verb that actually exists. Well, short says no. So I'm going to take that as about close to fact as we have. So expero is not a real verb. And there's a further problem with using expero, is it's too close in spelling to expiro with an I instead of the E following the P. And expiro means to die. So there's probably related meaning there, but it wouldn't be a good idea to use that made-up verb, the legally possible verb. So the other option would then be to use a different negative, and that would be a tacked onto the front of it. So what about aspero? Well, turns out that aspero actually is a verb, and it means to make rough. So that's definitely not what we want. And then the third option, inspero, is again too close to inspiro, meaning to inspire. So the only option that we do have for this is kareo. Or we could take spero plus non. But kareo plus spe is about as close as we can get. All right, so that covers that in the word we're going to use. Now, changing it into a prepositional phrase, this is, of course, a second conjugation. So that would be kareo, karere, with the long E. And the nominative singular, the present active participle, which is what this tense is here. I forgot to mark that. Present tense would then be carens. Carens spe would be lacking hope. So we want with to be cum, which then would force kareo to become ablative. So then it would be cum carente or carenti. This is always the problem that I have. I can't remember if it's the I or the E. This is something that Wheelock's talks about, where you use one if the participle is being used as an attribute and use the other if it's not. So I think I'm just going to go with an E because I can't remember. And then I'll leave a note when I go through and edit this. So then our form there is cum carente spe. And then we don't need the demonstrative. And then we don't need the relative pronoun. These three words together cover that entire phrase. So far, so good. As I said, but we're going to cut out because we want this to be an easy phrase to say, and it's going to be assumed. So then stand is our next word, and that's sto. Sorry, someone's loading the dishwasher in the background. Sto stare, short A. And this one's very easy. You just do a present active imperative in the plural, and that would be state. And then finally, upon these ruins, upon is our preposition there, and the important thing is to figure out, well, which one do we want? We could use in again, because in means in, on, onto, into, and a couple of other things. But then there is also super and supra. Super means over or above. When it takes the accusative, it's sometimes showing motion, sometimes not. And then, but supra, I think, is our ideal choice here, because supra doesn't just mean over or above, but it means like on the top of. So supra, and supra takes the accusative, not necessarily showing accusative of place to which. And then last, we have a demonstrative and ruins. Ruins is just ruina. It's a first declension feminine. These is the closer of the demonstrative, so it's going to be hic, hike, hoc. Since ruina is feminine, we want hike, and the accusative form of that, so hic, hike, hoc, huius, 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 hui, 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 hunk, Hank Hok. And I just, ruins is, no, ruins is plural. So shouldn't have done the singular ones, but we should go to the plural. So that's he, hike, horum, horum, his, hos, has. And then ruina would also be ruinas. So then we have all the information that we need, all the words and the forms we already know to put together our phrase. It's just ordering them. So imperative at the beginning of a sentence makes sense. So we want then, and let's go to this Burgundy. So we take nole, nolite, volutare, no change in that. Be unwilling to wallow. And then prepositional phrase. We could do either of these first. The order doesn't matter. So keeping with what the English has makes the most sense. In, and then there's no article. And then muck, we'd already chosen keinem. So this is ablative of place where. So in keino. And then we already have this translated, and you just plug it in. Cum carente spe, and then go to sto stare, and we know that the form for that, again, the imperative at the beginning is state, and then preposition at the front, supra, has, ruin, nas. Okay, so that is it in its full form. But to pare it down so it's a little bit better as a phrase and you can say it faster, we can start cutting things out. We can cut one of the two prepositions out. But if we do that, then we have the problem that they're going to be confused with each other. So then this would mean that we need to reorder. And I think that this one is the is the most important one for this clause. Cum, you can get the idea of that from carente, and then we know that spe is spe because of the case that carente takes. So if we cut out cum, then we need to take in kaino, and we actually need to move that to the beginning, right there. That way, in kaino, it does not become part of carente. People wouldn't take it that way. I know kaino is the wrong gender to match space, but carente is not. So to avoid confusion, that has to go now to the beginning, and I'll write it again down here in blue. So then down here with state, we've already taken out but. Supra, heis, ruinas. Heis isn't particularly important for the idea that you can understand that purely from the context. There's no more that comes after that. There's no more that comes after this. So I think has is something that we can ditch safely. So only two changes. Two words were removed and then one to the beginning, and then our phrase is done. And there you have it. In kaino nolite volutare, carente spe, state supra ruinas. Now, if any of you have a way to make this even better, if you think there are different words that should have been used instead, feel free to comment below. I'd be happy to see them. And if Pastor Fisk ever sees this, he might find it interesting. I don't know. Yeah, I think that's all I've got. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that this has been interesting for those of you who have watched. If you see any mistakes I've made, please let me know, and I will... well, I don't know how to correct add annotations to the video, so can't really correct them, but at least I will know where my errors are, and I do appreciate that. Oh yeah, I was gonna suggest some channels. Forgot about that. So naturally, this is a ad for Pastor Fisk's channel. Be aware, it's definitely an acquired taste. For some, one of my siblings tried, didn't like him, moved on. That's fine. The the live stream today, it went crazy there for a bit. So if you do watch it, I'm going to post a link in the description. You'd probably be wary of the chat. And if you're going to read the chat, you should read it all the way through so that you have the full context of what Pastor Fisk and later Pastor Wolfmueller, who joins him, are talking about. And that way the argument going on along the side isn't a complete mystery to you. Something else that I think is worth watching, and if you've watched the end of any of my videos, then you may have come across me linking to this channel before, is Lutheran in a Strange Land. He talks about a lot of interesting church history things, a lot of the controversies, a lot of crazy things that are going on right now. I think he's a good guy to keep track of, and especially to learn from. And then there's Pastor Wolfmueller's channel. I also link to him a lot of the time. He's great devotional stuff there, church services. I think they moved that to a different channel. And then there was something else. Yeah, I don't remember. Well, the fourth one, when I remember what it's called, I'll also put that in the description. Again, thank you very much for watching. Have a good day. Wale.